if I can't go to a bar 5 years into my sobriety to have a hamburger for lunch, that's not sobriety. At the end of the day, you can't live in therapy and you can't live in treatment. You cannot live in IOP, and you have to live a life that is where you can be respectable and look in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm okay with who I am.
My route hasn't been AA. I'd love AA.
I think it's important, especially for men, to be with other men, right? And you don't have to make it your whole life like some people make a program their whole life, and I'm not recommending that at all.
Yeah, your quote is, if God feels inaccessible, make service your higher power.
100%. Go do something. Get off your ass and go do something for someone else.
Okay, welcome into the Cappy Hour podcast extravaganza with my guest today, Matt Grace. Hey, Matt.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So Matt has a grippingly honest memoir coming out on August 11th called God Doesn't Relapse. It reveals the story of a selfish, entitled, lying, cheating, manipulating, unfaithful, abusive, cruel, worst case drug addict. That is my distinguished guest today, Matt. Tell us about yourself.
Well, so it's important that I wrote the book because I want to reach a broader audience, just so people have a little background. I spent 10,000 hours working in the addiction space. I started for a nationally recognized private practice in Grosse Pointe, Michigan. And then I formed a practice called Saving Grace with a business partner. He handled the therapy side. I handled the recovery side. And unfortunately, as you know, in the addiction space, the ancillary services are very expensive. And so the high net worth families were the only ones who could afford to hire us. So I really want to reach families that are struggling with substance abuse, that are related to someone who is just, they're at their wit's end. And so, and I use my family as a perfect example of how not to parent. And so there's really three themes to the book. It's enabling, how service work and volunteer work changed my life, and the relationship with God, not in the traditional way. I mean, I support obviously people who are religious, but all walks of life and all paths to find a higher power. And I've been sober for 21 years. A lot of my childhood friends are dead. And I believe that I was spared for a reason. And that reason is to be of service and to help other people.
That is awesome. So much I want to touch on there. And I might have to start with that one. I have in big letters, death. I'm like, this guy, book is phenomenal, by the way. He's got a million crazy stories. Unbelievable what he's gone through, and to still be here. But yeah, you've lost a lot of people in your life, including, your best friend, said Wells, couldn't have a better best friend, your other friend, Eric, and then tons of other people, right? As well as clients, I'm sure. So how do you deal with all that?
By harnessing pain into service, right? I think that, as you know, as someone who's in recovery, that I firmly believe that the pain that we go through and the losses that we experience are just part of God's plan that puts us in a unique position to help someone else. So you could say, I wouldn't, if I could change anything in my life, maybe my failure in education, but I wouldn't really change anything, because had I not been an alcoholic, or had I not struggled with drugs and alcohol and pornography and gambling, then I wouldn't be the person I am today, someone who is filled with gratitude, empathy, a commitment to leaving the world in a better place, right? So I think that pain is necessary. And I think that if you can learn how to embrace and harness the pain that you have and then turn it into service for someone else, I truly believe that's what my purpose is.
I love one of your videos on Instagram I just watched. You're sitting at a bar and you said, I'm tired of people saying they fear alcohol. If you don't want to go to a bar, it's one thing, but you shouldn't fear going to it. Now, 10% of the world has hospitality jobs, and many of those are in recovery. Many of those people are in recovery, and they still show up to work surrounded by alcohol every day.
Listen, that's why I'm very precise with words. It's one thing to say I don't want to go to a bar, but when someone says that I can't or that you shouldn't, that's where my passion comes in. Because at some point, and right, these videos are not for people with 30 days, right? I'm trying to give hope to someone who's thinking about starting a life of recovery, that fun doesn't die in the program, whatever you choose, which program you choose, right? I've had some of the best. I go to concerts. I have more fun sober at concerts than I did drunk and high on drugs, right?
Amen.
Sporting events, traveling, right? I'm posting a video where I'm filming a mosh pit at a Metallica concert, and I'm having a blast because these guys are slamming into each other. They're piss drunk. They're going to feel horrible tomorrow. And I'm sitting back with my friend, just loving the ambiance. I'm at Tiger Stadium. First of all, Metallica is incredible live. And when I hear someone that says that, well, I've been sober for 12 years and I can't have alcohol. If I get married, there's no booze at my wedding. You can't have booze in your house. That's just not the responsible, because there's a lot of people who can be responsible around alcohol. And we're supposed to be in this place of neutrality, right? And I know that it takes some people longer than others, but at the end of the day, if my goal is to make sobriety seem fun, and my responsibility as someone who's been sober for 21 years is to tell someone who's new, and I don't care what program it is, that you will have fun again, right? The life that you're living now is not fun, being hungover every day, or whatever consequences you've experienced. But if I can't go to a bar 5 years into my sobriety to have a hamburger for lunch, that's not sobriety.
Now a word from our sponsor, who is me. I am Brian, a certified sobriety and subconscious mindset coach. I spent years overcoming alcohol addiction and studying how the addicted brain works. I work with clients like you every day who find doing it alone or going to meetings just isn't enough. I'm not only a coach, I'm also a partner. Your sobriety will be my sobriety. My contact info is in the description. Let's do this.
If I can't go to a bar 5 years into my sobriety to have a hamburger for lunch, that's not sobriety.
Right. Yeah, it's so true. And I love to say you got to stay sober, stay patient. As my friend Sober Megan just said on a podcast, she said, people think in those early days of that gray period that's what sobriety is. And, oh, this isn't fun. That's not sobriety. Sobriety is, true sobriety, right? That's just the early stages. But as you progress, your pleasure baseline has been so hijacked by artificial dopamine. It takes a long time for it to come back down. But I say it's come back down so far for me. I get euphoric just from brushing my teeth. To which someone said, what kind of toothbrush do you use? But it's true.
Well, ironically, I just have to say this is a crazy part of when I think of toothbrush. When I lived in that awful sober home, and I had a roommate who was HIV positive, he was using my toothbrush unbeknownst to me. Yeah.
I read that and cringed.
So I just thought of that because of the toothbrush. So yeah, it's good thing though in Florida they're cleaning up the sober living business. I was there 25 years ago when it was a disaster.
All right. I wasn't sure if you were being ironic because in your book, good God, what a disaster is right. You had a roommate bringing in, it was getting mailed crack pipes, right?
Yeah, that was at the first treatment center. I went to a treatment center in Grand Rapids, Michigan when I was 18. It was 4 months inpatient. Now, this was a spinoff of Talbot. Talbot is a treatment center in Atlanta. That's where the Delta pilots go, the doctors, the dentists, the lawyers, any profession facing a licensing revocation, they go to Talbot. And so one of the doctors who graduated from that program came back to Grand Rapids and started something called WEMAC. And I was the only teenager that was in that program. So anyway, I don't know why, but that's how it ended up. And after the 4 months of inpatient was over, I lived with a doctor, and I started using and he started using unbeknownst to each other. and I Googled him, and his license was suspended. I don't know if it was ever put back into, I don't know what the term is, but I don't know if it was reinstated. But a lot of these doctors and a lot of these lawyers and pilots, they have to be on random drug screening for 5 years. Right. And so that's how I modeled my practice. Clients would hire me for 1 year, but I would take that 5-year model, which the drug testing is crucial, right? Because I knew a doctor, I grew up in the same neighborhood. He got in trouble, was put on this physician's healthcare program, PHP, and had to piss randomly for 5 years, failed a drug test, lost his medical license, and killed himself.
Wow.
So there's way more skin in the game for those working professionals than there are for just the average layperson who is going to treatment or IOP or having problems with their families. So that was mandatory in my 1-year cycle with my clients, was that they had to be randomly drug tested. You have to have skin in the game.
It's unbelievable how many times people relapse. I mean, you talk to a guy who spent like $1 million bucks, right? He was in 25, Justin. You know, you say treatment guarantees nothing. Justin was in rehab 25 times, spent $1 million.
Can I tell you that Betty Ford said he can't come back?
Really?
Do you know how hard that is to do? Yeah, they said don't come back. That's like, I was expelled from 2 preschools. That was pretty bad, but getting expelled from Betty Ford that's a whole nother level. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because I've dedicated my life to helping men less fortunate than me, because I grew up in privilege. And so that's something that I'm very passionate about. And so this is a man who was wealthy. He retired at 50 or 55, I can't remember. And he had no purpose, right? Addicts need purpose and meaning. And my mentor said, if you want self-esteem, then you should start doing esteemable things.
Yeah.
Right. And I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. So this guy we had the same sponsor, but I just followed my sponsor's direction because I was desperate. And here was a man who I said he was allergic to humility. And, you know, and this isn't, I want to be very clear that I'm not promoting any program, right? I support, however, you know, you don't go to 12 steps. There's people who go to Dharma and all these other things, but he refused to be of service. And what I tell people is that if you're struggling with drug and alcoholism, I don't care what program it is, just be of service to whatever that is. Do you know what Celebrate Recovery is?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's a Christian-based recovery group. It's Jesus-based, right? So they have them in churches. So just to kind of tell you the BS that I've smelled, you know, over the 21 years and then in my practice, this person called me and said, I'm in Celebrate Recovery and I hate AA. And I said, okay, well, why don't you like AA? And she's like, well, Celebrate Recovery gets down to the root cause. So I said, okay. I said, so go be the best version of yourself and celebrate recovery. You know, you can be of service to the new person in that group. She said, well, I lost my driver's license. I said, okay, can't someone take you to a meeting? Can someone pick you up and bring you to church? Oh, well, they won't do that. So I said, now I'm hearing all the excuses, right? And it's like, well, maybe you need another program, because if someone's not going to come pick you up, right? You're in a church group and they won't give you a ride. So one of the things I'm passionate about is that addicts have to start being honest with themselves, and alcoholics. Do you really want to get sober? And if not, that's fine, right? Because that's where I was. I think we've all been there, where you're just not ready to put in the work, whatever that therapy, whatever it is.
Yep. Yeah. I was trying to help a guy, and ultimately he just, you know, I was drilling him with questions, and he finally just said, okay, I love to drink.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather die drinking than live sober. And I said, okay, now we're getting somewhere.
Right.
You know, I can't help you with that kind of thinking. At least not me talking to me once a week. But he had to get sober. I said, you need a sober companion. You need someone with you 24/7. Because despite him saying that, he knows how happy he was when he was sober, but he wasn't ready to do it.
And I mentioned in my book, because I've had a service position for 20 years in the same treatment center, and I would see, Detroit has a lot of union jobs based on the big three, and so it's almost impossible to get fired because your union protects you. And so I go in and see the same people 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 times, and I'd say, "Oh, hey, Carl, nice to see you again. What's going to be different this time?" I put my name and number on the board. You can call me or any one of these people, and we'll take you to your meeting, right? It's called Bridging the Gap. So we would go in and talk to people who didn't have driver's license and said, we'll come take you to a meeting. And, it's just like they're there just to dry up and go for another run.
Yep.
So there has to be accountability from our perspective and our effort to want to get clean and sober.
Yeah, it drives me crazy, man. I told you, my route hasn't been AA. I'd love AA. I just never. I was a hermit in my drinking days, and now I'm a hermit as a work from home entrepreneur with severe ADHD. I'm trying to overcome. So, I do online communities, but they don't talk enough about the work. In fact, I had to learn on my own what the work is and why the work works. And now that I know, and I describe it as it's doing hard things sober, it's really about spiritual growth and personal development, which everybody craves, but especially addicts, which is why it doesn't work when people just throw them in jail and don't give them any rehabilitation and then just release them. All those morons that just want them to be miserable in jail. And then they're just going to be released in the same state they were in. So you talk about, asking clients, you'd say, okay, you lay out the course of action they need to take in their first year to get and stay sober. And you said, how many are prepared to do that? And like 3 out of 35 hands will go up. And then nobody will take phone numbers. The panel will all put their numbers up on the board. They won't get any calls.
No, to be fair, when I was in treatment, all I cared about was hooking up with women. And the second treatment center that I went to when I was in Texas, everybody was hooking up with everybody, and they saw that I was acting inappropriately, and they made me sign a contract saying that if they see me talking to another woman, that I'm going to be kicked out of the program. And they don't kick enough people out of treatment because they just want the dollar. Not all places, but a lot of places are unscrupulous, and people are making a lot of money on the backs of addicts and alcoholics. And the truth is, I deserve to be tossed out of treatment because I was giving the staff a hard time. I wasn't done. And, I say, I wonder how many people died because I had the bed that they needed or wanted.
That's tough.
And that's all the centers that that was the second center I went to. This is incredible. I didn't even know that I was there until I went through my mom's closet and found a psychological evaluation that I was in this treatment center. I don't remember being there. And because I struggled with amphetamines, I would have psychosis and just have terrible, anybody who's abused Coke or meth or Adderall or any type of amphetamine, and you get into a psychotic break, I lost all touch of reality. And so there was a paragraph where the psychiatrist was describing my behavior in the unit, where I was sleeping during group, laughing during emotional conversations, throwing chewing gum across the room, just immature, ungrateful, and disruptive. And the treatment center industry is just now kowtowing to people. You can bring your laptops, your cell phones. You could just, right? It's like, I don't know. I just made people miserable, and I didn't deserve to be at treatment.
Yeah, it's brutal. I did a recent podcast with a woman who lost her son at age 24, 25, 2 years ago to addiction, and the thumbnail of the podcast is "Rehab is a Joke." Because we talked about why 70 to 90% of people with drug addiction, they say relapse. You can get different stats, but I checked that one and it's up there. So it's crazy. How maybe it's half and half, right? That are in it that just want to save people, maybe making money at the same time, but then there's people in it just to make money. I mean, would you agree with that? I feel like in some ways you bash rehabs, but I think in some ways in the book you kind of defend them and talk about how it's, and you've already said here, it's largely up to the individual as well,
Well,
right?
I think that yeah, as far as treatment is concerned, one of the best things I ever heard is my mentor said, "Do you know what the best treatment center is? The one that works." And so I think that I see people get sober in the Salvation Army, and I see people get sober paying $100,000 a month. Right? It's up to you. Have to want to stay sober. You have to, like, even if it's not a 12-step program, you have to change your behavior. If you're not going to modify your behavior, and if I'm still going to lie and manipulate and steal while not using, that's not going to end up very well for me in my life, and it's going to alienate all the relationships that I had in my life and that you have in your life. And so, there has to be. That's why I'm so bullish on service, because you don't need to believe in God to make a pot of coffee, right?
I
And
like
that's
that.
we need to cut. So I spent 10,000 hours working with men, and when they'd say, "Oh, I don't believe in God," and I'd say, "Don't worry about it, just come volunteer with me." And then when they didn't want to do that, then it was very easy to understand that they just didn't want to do much. And
Right.
it was taught to me that once you start to care for the welfare of someone else or something else other than yourself, then you'll start to at least chip away at the obsession that you have. And so if you're watching porn 3 hours a day, if I go volunteer somewhere for an hour, well, now that's only 2 hours a day that I'm watching it instead of three, right? So there has to be some form of a transition, a spiritual transformation, whether that's a religious God or a group of people or volunteer work. But in my experience, having when my father passed away, I went out and bought my dream car. I bought a 911. I bought a new home. I joined a golf club. I started traveling. I bought clothes, watches. And 8 months later, I sold my car because the car did absolutely nothing for me. And what I did was I tried to outrun the pain of losing my father. And the one thing that really brought me back into a balance in life, because I think everybody needs balance in life, and when you're in active addiction, you have zero balance. And so the balance that I needed was I started volunteering at a place in Detroit for that housed young women who have been sex trafficked. And I can tell you that these are the worst of the worst stories. These are young girls who are raped by their own family members. They're sold for crack. It was just so eye opening, and that provided me. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't own a 911 if you can afford one. What I'm saying is that there's nothing wrong with owning nice things as long as I own them and they don't own me. And I think that everybody thinks that the next 20 grand or the next promotion, and again, I'm saying you should have ambition. You should have want to earn more money, right? I'm a capitalist. But at the end of the day, that's not going to fill your spirit at 9 o'clock at night when you can't get your therapist on the phone. You can't live in treatment. I think that's the mistake. It's treatment, sober living, IOP, all these external solutions like methadone and Suboxone and Antabuse. You're not supposed to, like. I'm okay with that for being a temporary, I guess, pause or a temporary solution. But do you want to be on that stuff at 10 years? I've had a lot of lived experience with Suboxone, and most of the people who I know that were on it were not happy. If you put a pill into your body, you're going to have a reaction. And one of the things that I talk about is, I don't know if you know this, but there's a surge in nitrous abuse. Okay, it's making a resurgence. And so one of my videos, I say that Suboxone loves nitrous, because I know people who don't have, right, the Suboxone has curbed their appetite for opiates, but they're huffing nitrous. That's not sobriety. I don't care what, that is not sobriety. If you're huffing balloons, you're 35 years old, you're in a bad way.
Yeah. Yeah, and for those who don't know, Suboxone is an opioid agonist, they call it. So it's supposed to reduce the cravings to do the drugs, and abuse alcoholics take to reduce the drinking cravings. In fact, it can make them sick when they do drink. The
Yeah,
Suboxone cannot.
a lot of people can power through that though.
Yes, it definitely doesn't work for everybody, but for some it
No.
does. I have a friend who, her husband, she's watched him take it for years, but I continually say to her, "Hey, that's all he's doing. That's not doing the work. That just freezes your midbrain, which is where your cravings come from. But until he does the work to strengthen his prefrontal cortex to fight off the midbrain, and that's another thing. That's what the work is strengthening your prefrontal cortex to fight off your midbrain. Until he does that, he's not going to evolve. He's not going to gain emotional sobriety, and he's going to be dependent on that for the rest of his life. And you talk about that in a video. You say, yeah, it's just different substance, same emptiness.
Well,
recovery
listen, I'm a
isn't
big believer in medication. Specifically, I've worked with a lot of men who suffered from schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, and my heart goes out to them, because that's a brutal. People, I used to have zero empathy for them because I didn't understand it.
Yep.
And as I started working with them, I started to have a shift in my thinking, and to see what kind of life, what they have to overcome. And so what I say is that service is an addition. It's not a subtraction of medication, right? Medication treats your brain, but service treats your spirit. There's right, like, you have a human spirit, and that has to be treated. And you can be on medication, but that doesn't prevent you from being a prick.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You talk about, you kind of just allude to it. Service will interrupt your obsession with whatever your addiction is for at least a few hours. Do something nice with no return.
So
It's
people like to hop on, be like, "Oh, you're talking about AA," and I'm not. That's where I got sober. But what I'm saying is, you can go to a nursing home and spend time with someone. So my mom lived in an independent living facility for a year and a half, and we would go to brunch every Sunday. And it was shocking to me how many seniors don't have anybody that visits them. Shocking and disgusting that kids don't come to see their parents.
Yeah.
And so you could go spend time with an elderly person, right? I mean, that would be an incredible way to be of service to humanity. There's so many things that you can do that are outside of a 12-step program. But then you got to ask yourself, is this something that you want to do? And you will start to feel better if you implement yourself, if you commit to something where you're trying to make the world a better place, right? That will help relieve the depression. I'm all for therapy. I could name just about every therapeutic modality that there is, and I'm a big believer in it. But at the end of the day, you can't live in therapy, and you can't live in treatment. You cannot live in IOP, and you have to live a life that is where you can be respectable and look in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm okay with who I am. And so there's no greater place to start than to be of service for somebody. I've seen the most phenomenal turnarounds, like I said, from a combination of things, but service being one. And I'll just touch on, my mentor was helping someone who was bipolar disorder, and his disposition was really bad. So he'd come to meetings, his head would be down, he'd be sullen, withdrawn, not want to talk, not make eye contact. So a lot of people aren't going to want to be friends with someone like that, or even communicate with someone like that, because they don't know how to act around them. They don't know what to say, right? It's not easy being around someone who is in a manic condition. And so I said to my former sponsor, I said, why don't you give him a service position? Because he kept relapsing. And he got a service position on a Tuesday night and a Sunday night and kept it for a long time. And he's been sober for like 6 or 7 years now. His disposition has changed dramatically. He smiles more. People will be more apt to talk to him. And that's what someone who, right, like the medication can keep him alive, but his spirit needs to be living. He needs to feel like he's alive and living. And it's made life much easier for him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's huge. It helped me. I inadvertently, just early on when I was getting sober, I would start helping people that were in worse shape than I was in my community. And then found I had a bit of a gift for coaching people. So just kept on doing it. And it definitely helped accelerate my recovery. And as you said, it'll eradicate the selfishness. And you know, you do talk a lot about humility. And I gained so much humility through the recovery process. I came in so judgmental, a horrible listener, definitely not all that humble. And through recovery and sharing, you know, I gained all of that. You know, I stopped being judgmental because I didn't want anyone judging my shares. And I became humble because I felt so nervous. I didn't even share for 3 months. I was petrified of it. And then slowly I got more and more used to it. And then I became a great listener because you only speak for 3 minutes and then you got to listen for the other 57. And I started taking copious notes and getting obsessed with it, which is one of the key ways that I overcame it. And I think you're in that boat as well. You know, I call it 10,000 hour rule. You talk about that you've done it. You did it in your recovery work. I did it just talking about recovery, really. You know, that comes out to 416.6 days. You know, it's not just days of being sober. It's days of actively doing the work and talking about it, researching it. And that's been a key way for me to overcome it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have lost perspective. And so I think what service work does is, you know, I live in a suburb of Detroit, and as you know, they have I'm sure you've heard of the movie 8 Mile. It's a famous movie with Eminem. So in Detroit, they have mile roads. And so a lot of people who've grown up with some sort of privilege, even middle class people, I think that what doing service for someone who is less fortunate than you, it will quickly make you grateful for the problems that you have. Right? I think there's too much self-pity and too much terminal uniqueness. You know, you don't understand my problems. And they get, I saw an author on Joe Rogan's podcast. She talks about ruminating, that kids are depressed because all they do is think about depression. And so it's so true. It's like, if you don't have an active life, and when I started volunteering for people less fortunate than me, it snaps me back into reality very quickly, right? There's people who have to decide whether to pay for groceries or gas. I'm far removed from that life, and most people are.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the fable of the guy that goes up to heaven, and once he's, you know, carrying a cross on his back and he thinks it's so big and heavy. So he says down on St. Peter, like, I want to trade mine in. So he said, all right, go ahead. There's a whole room full of crosses. And then turns out he has the smallest one of all of them. So
I like that.
Yeah, that is a good one. And you talk about depression, you know, and like you talk about purging yourself of all mind altering substances. You know, resuscitation starts with complete abstinence. And
right,
you
but
say
I'm not talking about antidepressant medication.
Yep, and I was just going to say, but then you point out not antidepressant, but also that many don't necessarily need it. They may have been misdiagnosed, or I like to say I only had, the only depression I ever had was alcohol induced depression, or I've since learned, now that I know I've ADD induced depression, because wake up every day with overwhelm, and then I shut down, and then it becomes compound overwhelm. But yeah, ADD gets misdiagnosed often as depression or anxiety. And anxiety is another one that people think they have a ton of, but so much of it is alcohol or drug induced. And then what do? You know, I say, alcohol is the only anxiety pill that you would take that works for 20 minutes and then makes it worse. But we can't stop taking it. And then and makes it especially worse in the morning. And then what do we do when we have anxiety? We drink coffee, the choice of beverage of alcoholics that induces anxiety, raises your cortisol level. It's really the worst thing for alcoholics. But hey, ABB, anything but booze. It's a crutch, cross addiction, whatever. But after 2 years, I've given it up. And I'm now super sober, including Klonopin, which I was taking for my anxiety only as needed, but it was mainly to counteract the anxiety from the coffee.
Did you have a hard time getting off of it?
Yes. It was a lot like quitting drinking.
The evidence on benzodiazepines now is raising an alarm.
Oh, and I'm sorry. I thought you meant coffee. I had a much harder time getting off of coffee. No, I kind of defend
Klonopin. Lucky.
Yeah, because you know what I say I know, and I want to talk about Adderall. I had a 7-week Adderall experiment, and then I learned why addicts can't take that because it's just giving you a dopamine hit. But Klonopin hits your GABA system, which alcohol also does, but what we're really addicted to is the dopamine. So it hits your GABA system. So it just makes me kind of sleepy. I gained a reliance on it where just like with alcohol, I started always taking one before I had to do a hard thing. But no, I did not have a hard time. It was one of those. Once I put my mind up to.
Yeah, the evidence now on benzodiazepines is really bad.
Really? What are you hearing?
How destructive it is, how damaging it is.
Interesting.
It's first of all, it's one of the most difficult things to you can die, right? Like alcohol, you have to be detoxed very carefully. You can't just stop. And my former business partner, who was a well-respected therapist, was saying how he'll never prescribe another one. Xanax is it's just not good.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of Xanax horror stories. In fact, the woman whose son died, I think that was one of the ones he was on. But I'm always careful to say it worked for me. Don't recommend it. But I also don't recommend quitting cold turkey without alternatives. And it's either drink or nothing. So that's why Klonopin worked for me. I just took it as needed, break emergency glass as needed. Like I once went to a college reunion and I walked in, it was way brighter than I expected. I was way more uncomfortable than I expected. So I beelined to the bathroom, took a Klonopin, and I settled right down. So I don't know, but it does depend on the individual.
Yep.
But again, it does, hitting your GABA system to me is different. But on that note, remind me, you talk about you hate the image that all addicts are weak and fragile and relapse machines, even though, let's face it, there's a very high percentage of relapse. So it kind of goes both ways. It kind of is part of the process for most, but it doesn't have to be.
No, no. So relapse is a part of addiction, but if your recovery is good, then you won't relapse. That's why I have 21 years of sobriety. I've buried 2 parents, one at 11 years of sobriety. Now my mom, just 3 weeks ago, I have 21 years. They died peacefully knowing that my life, all my affairs were in order. And that's the greatest gift that I could give to myself and to them. And I would never dishonor them or myself by picking up a drink. And that's like with the media, I think that Hollywood gets sobriety very wrong. That relapse machine. There's so many people that I've surrounded myself with that have such strong foundations. They have been through the worst, the most dire of consequences, and didn't go back out. And so my book is also very uplifting, and I share a lot of other people's stories in facing calamity. And like a man who buried his wife and son in the same year, right? He didn't relapse. And so what I say is, when someone says, oh, well, my mom died, so I picked up a drink. And what I say is, I'll show you 100 other people whose mothers died that did not. So let's just be honest, and you picked up a drink because you wanted to, right? It's a choice. I'm not going to drink. My mom just died 3 weeks ago. I'm still sitting here. I'm sitting here with you. I have responsibilities to this book tour. I'm not gonna cave in. It hasn't even crossed my mind. And so I'm thinking to myself, there's nothing special about me whatsoever. And if I can obtain this kind of recovery, anybody can. But it just comes down to, are you a survivor? Or are you a victim? If I hear the word trauma one more time, I'm going to explode. Okay. You read my book, right? By the age of 9, I was sent to a therapist who told me I wanted to have sex with my mother and castrate my father. And I physically assaulted him 3 sessions a week for 4 years. I would come in, he would close the door, I would physically attack him. Right? So that's traumatic. Think about you're going to a shrink, and I went to him for 9 years, right? And so that's the diagnosis that you're going to try to hang on me. And so you don't think that's disruptive or traumatic, but I'm not, you can't just, one of the things I say is that my parents may have failed me as a child, but I failed myself as an adult, right? When you're an adult, it's time to grow up. And I surrounded myself with a group of men who said, get over yourself. Like you're not that special. Your life's not that bad. But you have to be in a certain place to be able to be receptive for a message like that. And what happened was I went to start going to a meeting with a group of men, and I wanted what those guys had, which was balance, laughter, stability, employment, good guys in the community, men of character that I wanted to follow in their footsteps. And so I think it's important that you surround yourself in some form of community, whatever that may be for you. But I think it's important, especially for men, to be with other men, right? And you don't have to make it your whole life. Like some people make a program their whole life, and I'm not recommending that at all. But it's important to be around people like myself. And I think it's also important to be around my friends who aren't in recovery, right? You don't have to, it doesn't have to be black or white. Right. You can morph your program the way that you want to. But I had to become accountable. And there's this in Hollywood, they have first of all, the meetings are a joke the way that they portray them. They're not like any of the meetings that I go to. The message is weak. The people are weak. And this guy comes in there, a woman, I'm having a bad day and I don't know if I'm going to make it. It's infuriating. That does not represent the hundreds, if not thousands of men and women who I've come across with 20, 30, 40 years of recovery, right? That's an unfair representation of who we are. Men and women who face, catastrophes and don't pick up a drink. And that's just what I want people to understand, because that's the one of the things I'm trying to dispel is that, oh, it must be so hard for you every day, right? That's what I hear all the time from people who aren't in recovery. They have no idea how easy it is for me every day. Now, it's hard to get clean and sober, but it's easy for me to stay sober, right? And I'm sure that I hope you feel that way now with the amount of time that you've been sober. But the more time you have, the easier it gets.
Yeah, absolutely. You talk about being almost insulted when people ask, or about are you staying sober, especially with a death, are you going to be okay? And you're like, yeah, I'm good. And it's true. My mother, it's funny, when I told her I was trying to give up coffee, she said, Brian, you're already exerting enough willpower just not to drink. And I laughed and I said, oh, that's cute. You think I'm using willpower not to drink at this point? I said, I'm well beyond that stage. I said, I've lost the desire to drink. I wouldn't moderate even if I could, which I can't. None of us can. But even if I could, I wouldn't want to. So yeah. And it's because, I do the work every day. And I know I need to do the work for life. And I enjoy doing the work. I embrace it. We are the luckiest. It's a book, and I truly believe it. We do the work that everyone's called to do. We're just forced to do it in order to learn to enjoy life sober. So it's great. And you're right. You talk about how people relapse typically when they either separate from their higher power or stop praying. That's their thing, or stop going to meetings and ultimately just become complacent.
Yeah. Or they develop a routine that they break away from. Right. So even if it's someone who doesn't go to meetings, what I found is that they've moved away from whatever healthy, like, even if you don't go to meetings, right? And you like, I have a client, how I mentioned in the book, his recovery is the exact opposite of mine, but he changed his behavior. So he started eating healthy. He stopped womanizing. He stopped lying to women. He became a father of two. He's a devoted husband. He works out like a fanatic, right? Like, his routine is his form of a higher power, right? And so that's not someone who prays or does any service, but he modified his behavior and is selfless. Like, he was a major womanizer. And to see now of the devotion he has towards his wife and his children, and never thinks about uh, going behind his wife's back. That's the transformation that I'm talking about, right? Like,
Right.
if you don't want to go to a 12-step program, right, then you have to implement some kind of rigorous routine. Addicts need routine. I don't care what you say. I don't care if it's a 12-step program. I don't care if it's the gym. I don't care if it's scuba diving. I don't care if it's well, you can't always go scuba diving. Running, eating well, right? You have, if you take the drugs and alcohol away, you have to replace it with something else. And you
Yep.
better be careful what that something else is, because it's been gambling for me, it's been sex, it's been shopping, it's been cars, right? I can try to spend money to make myself feel better. And at the end of the day, um I'm happiest when I'm of service, right? And when I'm
Yeah.
online for 5 hours looking at McLarens and 911s, then I'm like, what is this really going to change my life? Is this really what I'm looking for? Right? Especially during COVID, a lot of downtime, watching porn, looking at watches, looking at clothes, nothing inward, only outward. And so, again, it's all about balance. And so that's an important part of my book, is that for people who don't want to go to 12-step programs, that my former client is really the model citizen of what sobriety looks like without AA.
Yeah. And you also talk about a guy, Dennis, who, he relapsed after 25 years because he broke his routine, right? He moved to Florida. He didn't like the AA crowd down there. So, did you say he traded his AA friends for country club ones?
That's what and that came from his mouth.
Yeah. Oh, yes. You quoted him, right? Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I should have
He
said.
made it back by the skin of his teeth. He died sober. But imagine, and physiologically, especially as an older man, to relapse after 25 or 28 years of sobriety as a senior citizen is extremely difficult, physically imposing. Like, it's almost, the more sobriety you have, the harder it is to come back, just physically as an older man. And what the alcohol does to you, as you know, it's a progressive illness. And so God bless him, he made it. He had to move home. He moved back to Michigan
Wow.
because he just became unplugged.
Yeah. As I learned the hard way, it's harder to get sober again after a long period of abstinence. I went 3.5 years before thinking I could drink normally, which is a big lie that the voice tells us that gets a lot of people. And the good news was found out I could drink normally. The bad news was not for long. And I knew within a week I was getting right back to where I was. And it took me 6 years to get back to a year of sobriety. So it is brutal. Don't
Yeah.
do
Yep.
it.
And he
People.
is,
Don't
and he
do it.
was just the finest man. He would give you the shirt off of his back. And he's someone who was highly respected because of the amount of service that he did. And then when he stopped, you saw what happened.
Yeah.
So it's just like anything else. If you're diabetic, I mean, nobody gets out of this life unscathed. Everybody's dealing with something. And even certain types of cancers can be reversed by diet, right? There's a lot of medical conditions, but you have to put in the work. I mean, the average American is 252 pounds now, the bigger than a pig. And so, well, let's not go there, but you got to change. And it's the same thing with the GLPs, like with Suboxone. I'm not anti-Suboxone, right? If someone wants to take that temporarily, that's fine. But with these weight loss drugs, that doesn't cure your the unhappiness. It just makes you look better. But it doesn't. And by the way, these people still think that they look fat. And one of my friends was telling me that his sister started on Ozempic or one of those drugs, and now she's lost all this weight and is on this pill and is still eating 6 Pop-Tarts a day. But she's not gaining the weight because of the Ozempic. So there you go.
Yeah.
It's still gonna kill you. Right? It doesn't change the behavior. So you know, you know, you have your routine and I have my routine. And I think we can both agree that when you're facing ADHD and you're facing some, you know, alcoholism or drug addiction or whatever disorder, whatever substance use disorder, whatever you have, everybody needs a routine. And so that's really my and I know a lot of people struggle with I'm trying to reach atheists and agnostics, and that's when I say, and for all you atheists out there, no more getting on your knees, no more praying, just roll up your sleeves and be of service. Welcome to recovery. You don't have to believe in God to do something nice for somebody else. It's that simple. Sorry. I don't want to hear I don't want to hear the God thing anymore.
Yeah, your quote is, if God feels inaccessible, make service your higher power.
100%. Go do something. Get off your ass and go do something for someone else. And listen, I might sound gruff, but you know, I'm not in the business of marriage counseling, right? This is life and death. And I spent 10,000 hours working, listening to excuses. And so I never said that my program was the best, because it's not. And I never said that I was the best mentor or sober coach, because I'm probably not. But I'll tell you one thing, I'm good at hearing BS. Okay. I can recognize when someone's trying to run game on me. And that's really who I'm trying to reach, our parents. So it's not just about enabling my addiction. My father paid people to do my homework. Freshman year, senior year, in college. I mean, think about that. What kind of message does that send? And that's because there's a crisis for men in this country, young men. If you go to a morgue, 4 out of 5 suicides are young men. They've never been more isolated, more unavailable for work. In order to meet a woman, I think that they have to swipe, if they're on a dating app, the average man has to swipe 1,000 times. And that's just a match. I mean, I think that the metrics of how men have to meet women the hurdles are enormous now. And so, one of the things that I say to one of my closest friends in Florida, who is a staunch atheist, and what I say in my book is he's as far away from God as I am close to him. Couldn't have different, you know, further opinions. But for 33 years, he's been taking a meeting into a treatment center for 33 years. That is a dedication, right?
Absolutely.
And he is a high character individual. He's faithful and loyal to his wife. He's a good parent. He makes mistakes just like everybody else, but that's someone who doesn't believe in God, but made service his higher power.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
And so this country's become more secular, right? It's not 1935. Right. I mean, I think there's been a comeback to the Catholic faith, I read somewhere, but at the end of the day, I think that people, the model that we have right now is not for everybody, like the Minnesota treatment model. But again, it's all about what do you want to do?
So we need to wrap up soon. Let me ask you one staunch quote you have is that addicts are hypersensitive egomaniacs with inferiority complexes. That's pretty rough.
Yeah, we are the most sensitive babies in the world. Wow. The minute that, oh my God, the minute that someone tries to point something out that I'm doing wrong, I won't swear, right? F you.
Yeah.
right? And then I stomp away from him. I won't call him, right? It's like that has been the biggest problem, is that people pleasing is killing people in recovery. I hate people pleasers. I'm the furthest thing away from one. Everybody knows where as a matter of fact, I think that, like, I heard the saying, when so and so dies, 100 people will come to pay their respects and 100 people will come to make sure he's dead. So
I
it's
like
like,
that.
thank God that I had the desperation and the humility to listen to people who told me what I needed to hear. And so, yeah, we are. I mean, I'll ask you: are you too sensitive sometimes?
Well, I come from a line of Irish people pleasers, but I've gotten strengthened in sobriety. That's the problem. You get weakened. Booze is like kryptonite, drugs too, right? So I was so weak in the throes of addiction. So I'm a lot stronger now. But I'm still a people pleaser. As you say, I'd rather be liked than scorned. But
Oh,
I,
it's very liberating not to care what anybody thinks. Let me tell you.
yes, and I'm getting there. My mantra I stole from a sober woman on Survivor, Carolyn. Who cares? That is supposed to be my mantra. And when I'm at the peak of doing the work, when I'm sharing and I'm reminded of my gifts and I'm strengthening my cortex, I take that attitude. And then when I'm not doing as much work and I lose some resilience, then I become more sensitive. So you and I talked about this on the pre-call. You're an inspiration. People got to check out your Instagram, but you tell it like it is. I love what you said about, yeah, don't be afraid of going to a bar, and it's true. Addicts, we hit the easy button way too easily, especially after we've amounted some days. But we'll let those days of sobriety go so quickly over the littlest thing, right?
Yeah.
Because there's plenty of other coping mechanisms out there.
Listen, there's nothing special about you or me.
Yes.
I mean, I know your mom thinks you're special,
How'd you
and
know?
my mom thought I was special. But if you and I can sit here and do this podcast or this interview, anybody can. That's what I try to tell people. I'm not like I haven't like cornered the market on sobriety. I'm doing. I haven't reinvented the wheel either, right? The idea of service predates any program. Doing something nice for someone else, I think, has been around for a long time.
Yeah. And the other thing is, this is a life and death disease, disorder, whatever you talk about. And people don't talk about that enough. Again, this woman, I should have said her name, Katie, who was just on, who lost her son. She says that is not talked about. They say you can end up in jail or you can die, but all they talk about is that you can end up in jail. Nobody talks about that you can end up in jail. In my community, a guy died from alcohol poisoning, and a woman, the next day they had a big meeting for all the members, and a woman's like, I got to admit, I didn't know you could actually die from alcohol use. But it's like, yes,
I almost
and a
did.
lot.
That's how my book starts.
All right, yeah, your organs can shut down.
You can
I
have
mean,
a
there's a
seizure.
million ways. What's that?
You can have a grand mal seizure.
Grandma, right? Absolutely.
So, real
Yeah.
quick, I got to do my shameless promotion now because my book publishes in 3 weeks.
Yeah,
So
and give me 1 minute. Give me 1 minute. Just because I'm even going to give you a quick shameless plug going into it. But I want to point out, you said you and I are no different, right? There's different levels of addiction, but I had it bad. You had it even worse. So I got to give the quote that, I mean, you were suicidal at points, but you said, as long as there were drugs and alcohol still in the world, it was worth staying alive. You wanted to squeeze out every ounce of intoxication you could get. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how bad you
And I
had
was
it.
lying in the middle of an airport on the ground without a ticket home.
You are definitely living proof. So what I want to tell you is, you're one of the people that is helping with the book promotion. Lillian, who coordinated this with me, she sent me a PDF copy of your book. And I said, oh, I'll try to get to it, but it takes me forever to read books. And then I started reading, and I said, Lillian, I got to tell you, I said, I read just a few pages while eating breakfast, and I'm totally hooked. Won't be a problem finishing this. And she replied and said, I get it. I read it in 3 days and even woke up early one day to do so. So yeah, it is a page turner. So go ahead.
Yes. I wrote this book because I want to help families, primarily parents, not make the same mistakes that my parents made. And maybe you can save your kid's life or your husband. God Doesn't Relapse, Sex, Drugs, and the Life That Almost Killed Me. It's available on Amazon. It publishes on August 11th, but you can get your pre-order now. And also on my website, I have an incentives page where if you buy X amount of books, you'll get 1 hour consultation, or you can get a VIP dinner with one of the families that I helped. So if your family is someone who's struggling, there's just go to the incentive page, and you can email me at hello@macgrace.com, and I can respond. And I just hope that I can change lives and save lives.
That is awesome. And congrats. I meant to say ask or confirm it early, but you mentioned it. But 21 plus years of sobriety, right? That is phenomenal.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So yeah, check out the book. Highly recommend. And I guess that'll do it. As always, please like, share, subscribe, submit a quick rating, and thanks for listening and or watching. And Matt, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Really, I appreciate it. And keep doing your good work.
Will do. Will do. All right. Thanks all. Remember, stronger, sober. Peace.